here with us, sharing her experience how when she bring in AI within her courses. So, Dr. Yuki Wolf, please feel free to start your.
Sure. Thank you for introducing me. I'm sharing the screen. And thank you everyone for coming to my presentation. Today, I'd like to share how I incorporated generative AI for language learning and teaching in my second and third year Japanese classes. And this is the agenda for today. Why AI for language learning and teaching, AI tools I used, examples, student survey results, findings, and conclusion. And it is critical to incorporate AI in language teaching. For example, Act 4, American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages convention is the largest convention for language educators and researchers, and there were more than 60 sessions related to AI for language learning and teaching practices and research. These are the tools I used, and last year I decided to focus on Microsoft Copilot because Texas A&M has the protected version. I had two main goals to incorporate. One, to empower learners and promote lifelong learning by utilizing AI as a tutor, and to maximize classroom interactions by assigning tasks that students can complete independently with AI at home. These were my implementations. So the first example was the use of AI images. As a warm-up activity, I created an image of my cat wearing Texas A&M outfit going to Kyle Field. So I tried to generate an image, something like this. And then after doing the best, that was my work. And as a warm-up activity, my students described the cat in detail within small groups in the target language. They needed to connect sentences using connectives. One student in each group acted as a secretary and used Copilot to generate an image. This was an example of my students' work. And a student noticed after they typed Kyle Field in Japanese, the image Copilot didn't spell Texas A&M Kyle Field correctly. And then as a next step, students compared their image with my image, and they talked the detail. And for this activity, I was actually impressed that the students kept talking in the target language. Another example of using an image was after they learned about nutritious Japanese diet, they needed to create their own lunch menu, and they needed to include 5 colors of food: red, green, yellow, black, and white. And I hope to generate an image, something like the picture on the left. But however, I tried, the Microsoft Copilot image was something like in the middle, and that doesn't really look authentic and looked like some a lunchbox Japanese restaurants in the United States serve. So I wanted to test, and I asked my students to try the best to create an authentic image. But for this one, none of them could create authentic looking obento lunchbox. And a couple of students wanted to draw pictures by hand, and actually this student did a wonderful job. drawing a great lunchbox. And after spring break, I asked my students to write a picture diary. In the prompt area, my students wrote details about their spring break and then generated an image. And this was my spring break image. I went to the American Association of Teachers of Japanese conference in Columbus, Ohio, and generated an image. And this was the AI image, and it was interesting that the AI created Japanese, but these are not authentic Japanese letters and characters. Another example of using an image was using an image to show the students' interpretation of haiku. So my students read famous haiku, and then I asked them to use the AI to generate the images. And the image on the left was the original image I asked the AI to generate. And for some reasons, instead of a frog, it showed a flower. So I asked the AI to replace it with a frog, and AI added a frog. And then I needed to ask AI to remove the frog. And I thought actually it's good to have this process because my students needed to use a target language to negotiate the meaning. After reading haiku, my students created their own and then asked the AI for feedback. The next example is the use of Copilot for conversation practice. As homework, I asked my students to practice answering interview questions for their study abroad or graduate school or job interview. I gave a set of interview samples and my students practiced answering interview questions. And then on the next day in the classroom, students acted as interviewers and interviewees and asked questions each other. And for this homework, I found it was good, especially for lower language proficient students because they felt more prepared before practicing conversations with peer students or human. The third example was using Copilot for editing. For some writing assignments, I asked my students to ask the AI to edit their writings. And I reminded my students that AI could be wrong, so for the final draft, they needed to use their judgment. And for example, this was one of the writing assignments, and my students took turns to post Instagram. And for example, a student wrote a post about his student organization. When he wrote the description, he wrote his original sentence, asked the AI to edit, and then he made a final post. And to the class Instagram, he only posted the final one, but to me, through the Canvas, they needed to submit basically the original one, AI conversation copies, and then final draft. Vocabulary selection. Sometimes my students ask me, how do you say something in Japanese? For example, the other day while I was talking with my student, he asked me, how do you say technically in Japanese? And in this case, it depends like if he is making a formal conversation or an informal conversation. And actually, when he asked the AI to be the Japanese teacher or assistant, and give the context and ask the AI to choose an appropriate vocabulary word. And I used AI as a tutor or teaching assistant. For example, for a reading activity, we can ask the AI to create a vocabulary list. The left column shows the vocabulary words. The middle one shows hiragana, which is written phonetically to show the Chinese character readings. And then the right column is the English descriptions. And for this one, still occasionally we need to modify some mistakes or differences, but it can save a lot of time to create vocabulary lists than using everything. And also, one time I asked the students to ask the AI to teach idioms and proverbs using food after the food unit. I've also asked the AI to have relay writing, and I'm teaching two sections of second year Japanese classes. And actually, for this activity, in one section of the class, I implemented using the AI. So basically, a student wrote a sentence, then AI wrote the next, and then the student wrote the next sentence, and AI wrote. And in the other section of the class, I did only with the people without using AI. So a student wrote a sentence and then another student wrote the next. And for this activity, actually it worked better to do without AI because I found students like to include inside jokes to write, and that doesn't work with AI. And in the future, I am considering to use AI for evaluation. So basically, before my students submit their projects, they ask the AI to evaluate based on the rubric I provide to enhance their writing. And I learned this idea from a conference session, and presenter said she liked this idea because AI evaluation was actually stricter than hers, so students needed to rewrite for higher quality. And after a semester of AI implementation, I asked the students to respond to the survey. To the question, do you like AI? 40% liked or loved AI, 26.7% were neutral, and 27.7% students either disliked or hated AI. And students used AI for corrections or conversation practice, but some said they use AI just because I required them. And to the question, how my students felt about AI corrections, and some people felt sometimes useful, but sometimes the feedback was different from their original intention. And many felt that AI Japanese was better than their Japanese. And one student wrote they were concerned because they didn't know if the AI language use was natural or not, and they commented, I don't want to talk like a machine. And to the question if the AI was useful for Japanese language learning, 60% of the students responded it was either useful or very useful. 26.7% said neutral, and 2% of the students responded either useless or very useless. 8 out of 15 students have used AI in other classes, such as medical writing class and computer science classes, either as a requirement or because it was encouraged. And I asked the students how we could make the most of AI. Some students responded we could use AI as a tutor for grammar conversation or vocabulary learning, but one student felt books are better, and one student was not sure if they could learn culture from AI. And to the question if my students had concerns about AI, only one student responded they had no concern, but students had concerns such as that AI information may be incorrect or unnatural, or one student felt they could not use their creativity or they may stop thinking if they rely on AI. And one hated AI images. And also, one was concerned about privacy issues or prejudice concerns. And one was worried about replacing human jobs. In my observation, on day one, when I asked the students if they have used AI for Japanese language learning, I simply wanted to know if they have experience, and I wanted to explore effective ways to incorporate AI. And one student responded, no, no, we are not allowed to use AI. So I had an impression some students may assume professors they hate AI. And I learned it's good to provide good prompts or share good prompt writing examples when I assign my students to use AI. And AI may misunderstand students' meanings or intentions because they are still learning the language. And it may be difficult for the language learners to judge if AI corrections are accurate or not, especially because they are not sure about language nuances. And image interpretation and creation activities can facilitate language practice and receive attention, even though it may be difficult to generate great images. And also, I thought AI images may be biased, like the example of a Japanese conference with inaccurate Japanese letters. So, in conclusion, it is inevitable that AI will be used for language learning and teaching. AI has the potential to empower students and promote lifelong learning by making the learning process more personalized and accessible. Additionally, receiving instant feedback is a significant advantage. Language instructors and researchers need to continue exploring effective ways to use AI for language learning, enabling students to become independent lifelong learners and maximizing human interactions in the classroom. And my goal is to use AI for more higher order thinking to promote critical thinking skills. So I would like to keep doing the professional development through CTE or also American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages and the American Association of Teachers of Japanese have AI special interest groups. So I will keep exploring. Thank you so much for listening. And do you have questions?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Yukiwo, for your presentation. I will
Thank
stop
you.
the recording and then feel free to start ask questions for discussion.
Okay, thank you.